The first thing that hit me about Northfield Maplewood Apartments was its quiet. Not the comfortable silence that wraps around you when you need some peace, but an unnatural, heavy sort of quiet. The kind that almost pushes against your ears, making you acutely aware of how devoid of life the place feels, despite the fact that it was nominally full. When I moved there, I was seeking refuge from the roar of the city, a difficult breakup, and the relentless demands of my job. What I got was different. I arrived on a fog-laden autumn day, my car's tires crunching over the tiny gravel stones of the parking lot. No one helped with boxes, but I didn't expect them to. I didn't plan on making friends with my neighbors. I was surprised by how few people I actually saw. I knew the building was fully rented because the landlord had said as much when I inquired about the available units. There were no curtains fluttering from the windows above, the balconies lined with neat and empty chairs. It was as if the building had hollowed out lives neatly contained within silent walls. On my second day, I ran into Mrs. Henley. She was an older lady who lived a floor above me. She must have been in her 70s, her hair a mauve-tinged white, skin like creased parchment. She clutched a small bag of groceries as she approached, the produce peeking out as eager as she seemed hesitant. "Ah, you're new," she said, her voice unexpectedly firm. I nodded, introducing myself. "Do you stay up late?" The abruptness of her question caught me off guard. "Sometimes," I replied. "Some nights I do." "We hear things, mostly at night," she said, that firm voice now a whisper. "Just mind you stay inside, okay? It's probably nothing." She offered me a smile that looked tired, as if practiced over endless repetitions to people like me, moving in and out. But before I could ask her more, she shuffled to the elevator and was gone. The envelope Mrs. Henley had placed around her warning was easy to dismiss, but the unease lingered. I tried to chalk it up to settling into a new place, new creaks, new rhythms. Yet over the following weeks, it became increasingly difficult to convince myself that nothing was amiss. Every evening, around the same time, midnight, I would hear a faint clicking noise emanating from the pipes. I should have thought nothing of it. I've lived in old buildings before, their innards prone to settling their metal bones any way they pleased. But this was different. It was methodical, and it didn't seem to affect just the pipes. Then things started to move. Picture frames on my walls tilted, always at the same degree, almost imperceptibly. I compulsively corrected them, only to find them skewed in mornings. Books on shelves turned around, their spines facing inward. I couldn't say that anyone was sneaking into the apartment, though nothing explained the changes I woke up to each morning. One night, as I lay awake unable to sleep, I imagined I heard distant conversation coming from the vents. The voices were hushed, hurried, like conspirators sharing their darkest secrets. I turned on my fan to drown it out, pressing against the paranoia creeping over me. Days bled into nights, and my routine became erratic. My work suffered, the stress visible in the persistent shadows under my eyes. Isolation had been my goal, and now it felt like penance. I ran into Mr. Lee from the second floor about a month after moving in. Unlike Mrs. Henley, he was talkative, almost too much so, looking over his shoulder anxiously as he spoke. "You hear them?" he asked abruptly, confirming my fear that the sounds weren't just in my head. I hesitated but nodded. "I've heard things, yes," I admitted quietly. His eyes were wide, expectant. "They say it's the building itself, you know?" Lee said, a tremble entering his voice. "It's like it remembers." I had no idea what he meant and frankly didn't want to. "The basement is worst," he added. "Sometimes I think I hear them there. On a particularly restless night, I decided to investigate the basement. Not out of bravery, but something closer to desperation. I needed to prove to myself that there was nothing there but old boilers and maybe a stockpile of dusty holiday decorations. The stairs leading down were dusty, banisters flaking under my grip. At the bottom, I flicked on the light switch. Fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows that edged into darker corners. The basement was a maze of forgotten history, boxes piled high and neglected building refuse. The air felt wrong, thick as if tightly wound around secrets. I chided myself for indulging my imagination, forcing myself to believe I had merely inhaled too much of the mustiness. Tucking my hands into my pockets, I wandered deeper, pretending I wasn't watching for something. Then I saw the door, a simple, plain white door, remarkably clean in this forgotten place. Unsigned and undisturbed, it should have meant nothing, yet it felt like a summons. An irresistible magnet pulling me forward. I found myself barely breathing as I approached, pressing my ear to scorched wood. Silence greeted me back. The handle felt cool, unyielding beneath my palm. When I pushed slightly, it didn't give, but remained staunch, almost defiant. That sense of something watching, something listening, pervasive and overwhelming, crept over me. I backed away slowly. The nights worsened after that visit. It was like I had awakened the building from its somber sleep. Whispers became more frequent, echoes more pointed. A growing suspicion tickled the back of my mind. Was there a message? I became withdrawn, polite but brisk with the few neighbors I encountered. My attempts to reach the landlord failed. Phone calls went unanswered, emails unreturned. I felt penned in, like the building itself was keeping me unwillingly cemented in place. Then came the dreams. Not nightmares, because fear was so perfectly interwoven into them, they seemed crafted from my reality. Doors leading to nowhere, hallways that unfurled forever, walls closing in while whispering their confessions. I woke one morning with an overwhelming certainty. I had to find out what lay behind that door in the basement. Burdened by my belongings, living in uncertainty, the questions overpowered any timid reluctance left. Equipped with a flashlight and my phone, I ventured to the basement, a resolve as unyielding as the floor beneath. The door stood there, patient and obscure. This time, when I pressed the handle, something shifted. It opened smoothly and silently into darkness. Pointing my flashlight, I found a narrow space, tall walls disappearing into darkness. The chill rose from within it, making my fingers numb. The realization that this was no storage room trickled over me. It was a passage, its terminus obscured in obscurity. Slow, hesitant steps took me inside when the door clicked shut, louder than any sound I'd ever heard in the building. I turned, instinct alone dictating panic, and found that my entrance had quite literally vanished. Smooth walls surrounded me with no discernible exit, no markings to suggest a way back. In the echo of my breaths, the low hum began, like the chords of an unfinished story or a revelatory song. My flashlight dimmed, betraying me in increments, throwing shadows where there hadn't been any before. The music of the whispers rose, marrying past with present. Then, just as striking, it stopped, and silence cascaded around me more profound than before. It was over. Only me, echoing heartbeat, and the tale told by those subdued murmurs. I understood enough to know that the building hadn't imprisoned me out of malevolence, but necessity, a guardian of stories lost yet always waiting. When I emerged, a thin strip of dawn kissed the horizon, a new day shading the opposite of my night's discoveries. I moved out shortly thereafter, gripped by an unexplainable urge. It was a disquieted, solitary experience. I fall, dead and tucked away, unsure how to articulate the truth. I hadn't found any ghosts or horror. I found only testament, and in listening, I had been freed, not captured. After I left, I came across scattered articles and obscure records, building lives painstakingly parsed to reveal a history of accidents, loneliness, misfortunes, residents whispered out of existence. In knowing, I felt implicated, touched by stories and solitude that weren't my own, yet had leaned in through brick-and-mortar walls, awaiting a listener to ease their quiet. Northfield Maplewood Apartments stands still today, bound in its silence. The people it shelters fading in cycles, into stories clothed in whispers, eternally under the embrace of its silent watch.